Chapter 239. Death King's Family, 3. Kim Yul. With that echo in my head, I faced the man. Good looking. The man had long hair. As the night breeze blew, his silver hair danced gently as if it was weightless. If it was cut from the roots, his hair would probably go flying to a faraway place. I felt like it would fly into some unknown desert. That's right. His silver hair seemed to long for a sandy desert. A place it had left, a place it could leave at any time, a place it would leave. The countless drifting hairs seemed to be longing to roam a sandy desert. Mr. Kim Yul. You called me. But, what is this magical land? There are so many powerful beings here, even if I was in my prime I wouldn't be able to guarantee my victory. His sharp blue eyes scanned the courtyard. There were the elites of the demonic cult, now the warriors of my family clan. The blood guard met Kim Yul's gaze with vicious energy. Incredibly powerful. The cafe part-timer, who reigned as an absolute powerhouse on the tower's 50th floor, evaluated them with a sincere expression. In fact, Kim Yul always had a sincere expression on his face. Exactly how powerful is incredibly powerful? Even if they went up to the 50th floor like this, those rabble wouldn't dare get close. Even those witches who live in those spider web-covered magic towers will only be able to determine who is truly the lords of the 50th floor after fighting them. Then. Tuck, I tapped Aburka's arm. What if we add this child? Kim Yul carefully examined Aburka's body. From his lumpy pectoral muscles, to his protruding thighs. Raising an eyebrow, Kim Yul tapped the muscles around Aburka's airway with a tuck, tuck. Amazing. Is he a monster? Kim Yul was expressionless. But from his eyes, it was clear that he was expressing genuine admiration. There was probably no one apart from the librarian and I who was this skilled at reading Kim Yul's expression. The epitome of the heavenly warrior body. There are martial artists, who, at best, can only cut humans when they swing their blades, so they are called human warriors. There are great warriors who can split the land with a swing of their blades, so they are called earthly warriors. However, heavenly warriors are different. When they swing their blades and split the sky, they don't care how many people die, or how many countries are thrown into disarray. Colossal. With just the power gathered here in this residence, it wouldn't be difficult to invade and destroy the floor of any constellation. He's my son. For the first time since he was summoned, Kim Yul fell silent. In his blue eyes, there was a mixture of shock and confusion. I was a being that could confuse Kim Yul. Wasn't that amazing? If he's your son. Kim Yul turned his head and took in Aburka's size. Then he looked at my size, then Raviol's. It looked as if an incredibly complicated equation was being processed in his head. Surprisingly, beads of sweat began to form on Kim Yul's forehead. How? That's impossible. It should be physically and racially impossible. Is it the tower's curse? The influence of a skill? No, but his growth rate. He's my adoptive son. Do you want to die, Death King? Suddenly, Kim Yul grabbed me by the throat. He was 100 ghost that had lost the strength he had in his prime, so it didn't hurt, but being stared at by those deep blue eyes scared me. Why dash, your expression of emotion has become quite diverse. Although your face is still expressionless, you clearly showed your admiration for Aburka and your rage towards me. I'm also a person. It can't be helped. Letting go of my throat, Kim Yul sighed. I lost the skill which allowed me to gain power by sacrificing my memory. In this notebook, I wrote all the things I threw away, in other words, half my life. Kim Yul took a notebook from his pocket and looked down at it. His eyes were filled with emotion as it scanned over the old leather cover of the notebook. I already threw away everything I could throw away, so it's impossible to throw away any more, which means there is nothing more to gain. Death King, as you promised. I am living. The things I didn't feel before, and the things I felt but threw away quickly are slowly accumulating in my mind now. The more things accumulate, the more my slumbering heart will gradually overflow. When that time comes, I too will be able to laugh, cry, get angry and love just like everyone else. Kim Yul looked at me. If you hadn't brought the class president back and reunited us, I would still be nothing more than a machine with an empty heart. Death King. Everything is thanks to you. I smiled. That's awesome. Kim Yul is a cool person. But, aren't you sad? Kim Yul tilted his head to the side. Sad? What are you talking about, Death King? Mr. Kim Yul seems to have found a precious person. Mr. Kim Yul's class president. Even though he's a bit unreliable, Hamustra also likes Mr. Kim Yul. Even if you regain the skill to throw away memories, you wouldn't throw them away so easily, would you? Kim Yul thought expressionlessly. That's right. After a while, he nodded. I cannot throw them away. There is a person who lived their life because of my death. There is someone who is fascinated by my life and loves me. The luxuries that humans lavished in from birth to death should all be enjoyed. I can't miss all the good fortune. Kim Yul looked up at the night sky. I see. Then he slowly looked back at my face. I am happy now. Death King. You made me happy. In Kim Yul's eyes, there was embarrassment, surprise, gratitude, but that wasn't all. There were many emotions floating in those eyes which were reminiscent of the deep blue sea. Is that your wish? Mixed there was also a known anxiety. Do you intend to make everyone you encounter happy? Speaking for myself, it was definitely not easy to make me this way. Wah. It was really different. I lost my memories. You created the trauma world to recover the fragments of those lost memories. I was unhappy. But to prove I wasn't just unhappy, you brought the class president. It wasn't profitable. It's hard to apply ointment to a single wound, Death King. What the hell are you dreaming? Letting out a laugh, I scratched the back of my head. It's nice to see. What? It's nice to see everyone smile. When we became unhappy, there was a God who bore our misfortune. It was a difficult task. If I had been born earlier, it might have been to see even more smiles. It was difficult, but I thought it was worth it. Mr. Kim Yul. Say it. You now have things to protect. The director, Hamustra, and the planetarium cafe that he liked. However, you don't have the strength to protect them. As you are now, you can peacefully enjoy the smell of books and coffee at the cafe that was built in the great library. Hunters can't go and make a mess in that place. Myself, the Black Dragon, 10,000 Temple, Chunmumun, Merchant Union, and Civil Militia can guarantee its safety because we all invested jointly. But, in other words, Mr. Kim Yul's current happiness is entirely dependent on others. I grabbed Kim Yul's shoulder. There was a time in my life when I had lost my life without even being able to touch his body. But now, it was really easy. Kim Yul couldn't shake my hand off or run from me. Kim Yul knew this too. That was why there was a tremor in his beautiful eyes. Seeing the tremor, I smiled. Aren't you scared? The director is weak. He's old. If some crazy hunter decided to rush towards him, he would definitely be brutally avenged by us, but the director would still be dead. The tremor spread to Kim Yul's shoulder, which my hand still held. Hamustra is no longer a constellation. Now, he's just a small brat. A weak little boy who likes to read. That child lost his power. So if a crazy bastard charges at him, he would die too. What? Kim Yul opened his mouth. What do you want me to do? If you ask me to protect them, I will. I said. I will order the members of my warriors that are quick-witted and sharp-eyed to infiltrate the library and guard them 24/7. Not only that, even if something happens and they die, I have the ability to reverse time by a day. So you can leave everything to me. Even if it was like this, it was fine. I wouldn't blame him. As for the sins he'd committed, that much, I could take it and cover it up. However, if you don't want that, if he wanted to choose something other than safety and comfort, I will give Mr. Kim Yul a chance to live again. Slowly, Kim Yul raised his head to look into my eyes. To live. I'm a little stronger than before. The abilities you had to give up after becoming 100 ghost. The skills. I can give them all back. Kim Yul froze. He looked at the warriors whose eyes glittered all over the courtyard. Not so long ago, they were just as helpless as Kim Yul. Although they all had their knowledge of fighting and tremendous tenacity, it was impossible for them to use their internal energy or perform martial arts. Indeed. Finally, Kim Yul's gaze reached Estelle. What he could feel from Estelle's silent figure was the power of a constellation, the very one who had single-handedly destroyed the Ejim Empire. When Kim Yul saw the Devil King responsible for destroying the empire he'd founded, he realized the truth in my words. You continue to grow stronger by the day. Well, this world doesn't allow me to be weak. The definition of strong varies from person to person. However, if the person who supports their family saves time every day to swing a pickaxe, if they keep swinging their arms incessantly because they're wasting seconds and minutes, then that person is strong. They're not wasting time. They're buying time. That can be considered a measure of strength. Kim Yul looked at me. You always buy time. Even if you can turn it back, even if you can return a day or a year, even if the value of time might be less for you than others, you live every day as if you can never go back. The expressionless Kim Yul talked about me. That's why I think you're strong. Then, Kim Yul said. I want to be strong like you too. I will work hard. Death King. I was silent for a while. Everyone is working hard. I wanted to spend some time savoring that fact. Estelle. A child who was once a doppelganger and wanted to become human. That was Estelle's wish. So she would work hard to become a human, and she would work hard to build a father-daughter relationship with me. Sylvia. An immature noble young miss who wanted to have Raviel. That was Sylvia's wish. So she would work hard to have Raviel, and she would work hard to fulfill Raviel's conditions. Kim Yul. A man who once grew stronger by throwing away his memories, now had things he couldn't throw away. He didn't want to throw things away anymore. That was Kim Yul's wish. So he would work hard to not throw himself away. Good. The others as well. Good. Since everyone had something, I was sure they would definitely work hard. As long as they have a small opportunity. And I could be that opportunity for them. I will give you a body, Mr. Kim Yul. I became strong to become an opportunity for others. The Earthbone Dragon's box activated. The Earthbone Dragon's box has been completed. Just like Estelle, the 4 demon lords, the cult members, and Sylvia Evanale, the existence of Kim Yul also became a black bead that stained my heart. Feeling a bit sad that it wasn't white, I breathed out. My breath was as black as my heart, and as it escaped my lips, it sank to the ground like a thick mist. From it, a body gradually began to take shape. The Constellation Killer. The man who had been freed from being a ghost and returned to being a human, slowly opened his right hand and closed it. He repeated this action several times. Then, he murmured, "I liked the passages I read in the book today. They were beautiful." Kim Yul looked up at the night sky. "However, much more beautiful things are awaiting me." At that moment, the constellation killer waved his hand, and from it stretched an aura that cut through the night air. It cut the moonlit clouds in half. With the full moon hanging between them, the dim clouds silently drifted apart in different directions. The white moon shone through the scattered clouds. Kim Yul looked at the moonlight pouring down on him. "Now, I can't remember that passage. Death King. How should I address you?" I walked towards Kim Yul. "For now, call me Family Head." Family Head. Yes. Someday, we will be each other's family. However, I'm worried about hastily talking about family from the beginning. We don't know much about each other yet, and we're not familiar with each other. We will definitely get closer. I took something out of my pocket. It had been a week since I'd met God. In that time, I'd wandered around the city and prepared this and that. While passing an old road, I stumbled upon a stationery store. After passing an elementary school student who had skipped school and was playing with a game machine in front of the store, I entered the store and found it. It wasn't that expensive. Shook. I untied the yellow rubber band that held the constellation killer's hair together behind his head. The rubber band was strong, and the silver hair was tied tightly. It's a gift I got while picturing that this day would come. After a while. It's my first time tying it, so it's not really working. It seems it's been a while. Is this okay? Well, anyway, I think it's okay. The constellation killer's hair was tied with an ordinary hair tie. I took the yellow rubber band. "You don't need this anymore." And burned it away with my aura. It had probably been a long time. Hundreds of years. While throwing away the thoughts of Kim Yul, Lafanta Ejim probably thought, "Even if I erase my memories, I won't forget that I was abandoned by the world." The students of Shinseo High School probably bullied Kim Yul into wearing the yellow rubber band. It hurt to tie your hair with a rubber band. It was simple yet effective bullying. Everyone could see Kim Yul wearing the rubber band, so everyone knew he was poor, and everyone could see that he was being bullied. It was a brand. Lafanta Ejim didn't hesitate to throw away Kim Yul's memories. He didn't have any good memories anyway. So he was happy to be able to throw them away. But this was proof. He wanted to leave proof that the world had abandoned him. He wanted to prove the type of person he was, how he was born, and how his life was branded. Only then could he curse the world as he pleased. The proof of the past, which had bound the constellation killer for a long time, had now been burned. Without any expression on his face, Kim Yul reached back and groped the back of his head. Kim Yul's fingers touched the 101 hair tie that was sold at any stationery store. "I want you to serve as a leader in our family clan. Mr. Kim Yul, please become our family clan's shadow asterisk. Be the shadow of our family clan who will monitor the movements of our enemies and gather information." Asterisk should be family shadow, but I'll leave it as shadow. "You mean espionage?" "Yes." I pointed towards the warriors hiding in the shadows. "Among the 4 demon lords, there is one called Ghost Flame Demon. He was the cult member in charge of spying for the demonic cult, and the Memorial Squadron led by him is a unit that specializes in spying on the various powers. Mr. Kim Yul led them. Is that really the right position for me? You are good at recording and analyzing information." I tapped the notebook that Kim Yul was still holding. The old notebook shook. "From now on, don't write about who you killed, who you should kill, and what you should throw away. Please write on for us, for the family clan. That notebook will become our diary. Kim Yul, please make proof for us with your pen and your writing. Then I will also be happy. Kim Yul was silent. Time passed and the scattered clouds dissipated. Under the faint moonlight, in a hammock in the corner of his hometown city where he was born and died, Kim Yul knelt on the ground. Understood. He lowered his head to me. I will offer my life for your dreams. And Kim Yul vowed. My family head. Chapter 240. We sat in the living room of an old city. 1. Dawn broke. The color of dawn seemed to permeate into Kim Yul's silver hair. As Kim Yul was kneeling before me, I had the luxury of looking into the dawn instead of looking up. That's right. Dawn was at my feet. Your existence has become clearer. It was at that time that I heard the tower's voice. The Death King's level develops. At the same time as the dawn shined brilliantly in the sky, the tower once more verified my qualification. Of course, this was natural. I returned Estelle's body, returned the bodies of the members of the demonic cult, allowed Sylvia Evenail to have a life, and finally, embraced the life of Kim Yul. As I carried their greed, desire, wishes and hope, became clearer. Became heavy. Broader. Skill slots have increased. Your hunter rank is now a class. May luck be with you. Yes, God. God, who wanted to be the mother of everyone born into the world.
So?
Jung. Even if those you considered your sons and daughters were to raise their claws and dig into you, you would only feel sad and slowly accept it, accepting it as your fault as well. I thought that was sad. If it was up to me, you wouldn't have to. Adjust the hilt of my sword, I looked up at the sky. In the past, I was worried if the tower could hear the voice of a guy like me. However, I wasn't now. Every word I said, every word I would say, would reach the ears of Tower, of
So?
Jung. Because I was now that kind of existence. Please wait for me to get there. Whatever golden rule, whatever kingdom, I will go clean them all up. You will be happier, with people to share that happiness, and I will show you that you were wrong. My declaration definitely reached the tower. Because an answer came down. May luck be with you. This day. I declared war on the tower. From now on, we are a family clan. I sat on the living room floor. Only Raviel and I were sitting on the floor, so it was clear who had the right to sit on the throne. The name of our family clan will be the Death King family. Hundreds of people were kneeling in the courtyard. They were all my vassals. The vassals could be seen prostrating themselves to me. If the courtyard was full, they went on the wall. If the wall was full, they even climbed to the top of a big old tree. In a surprisingly short time, there was sufficient troops to form a single family clan. I am the family head of this family clan, my husband, Raviel Ivantia. I am also the family head of a great family clan. Tuck, Raviel tapped the floor with the head of her fan. The head of the Death King family is the wife of the Ivantia family clan. It would also make sense for the husband of the Ivantia family clan to be the wife of the Death King family clan. All of the vassals here are lives harvested by Gongja. It wouldn't be cool for me to interfere just because I am Gongja's husband. Raviel smiled confidently. Translated into the language of this world, the meaning of Ivantia is Silver Heart, so my family clan will aptly be called the Silver Heart family. One day, the Death King family and the Silver Heart family will be completely united, and when that day comes, we will become the Death Heart family and conquer the tower. That's right. When that time comes, Raviel and I would be joint family heads and lead our family clan. Sylvia Evenail. When I called this name, the shoulders of one of the vassals kneeling in the courtyard shook. She was a blonde-haired, noble young miss, and a powerful apostle of a constellation. Yes. Family head. You will be the Grand Chamberlain of the Death King family. You will take care of what the family clan's members eat, where they sleep, and what they wear. From time to time you can call the members of the 4 units of the Death King army who are free to be chamberlains. I will leave the housekeeping needs of the family clan to you. Sylvia Evenale sweated profusely. Did you say all sorts of chores and odd jobs? I haven't forgotten what you yourself said. Sylvia's expression hardened. A chamberlain is someone who follows the family head more closely than anyone else. If you want to be like me, if you want to be someone who can accept others, stay by my side and observe me. This is the opportunity that I am giving to you. You can always quit if it's too hard. I said this sincerely. However, the only thing that can prove your heart is your heart and life. Think about it. Choose your fight. And if you fight, win. That should be what your butler wanted. Damn it. And so, a Grand Chamberlain who always muttered words like damn it, shit, and bitch, was born in our family clan. Compared to her bright blonde hair, her face was always dark. Every time her lips opened, curses would leak out, and from now, that would be Grand Chamberlain Sylvia Evenale's routine. Estelle. Yes, family head. When I called her, Estelle stood straight. Unlike Sylvia's indecent display, Estelle's expression was indifferent and her momentum was orderly. In the breaths she let out, there was the afterimage of the Devil King who once destroyed a continent with an army of hundreds of thousands of monsters. Please give your orders. You are my eldest daughter, the successor who will lead the family in my stead in the event of an emergency. A faint crack appeared on Estelle's mask at those words. Emergency is a disrespectful word. The family head will never die. I, of course, have a secret. Losing my life 1 or 2 times won't be enough to cause a crisis for our family clan. However, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't prepare for emergency situations. What would happen if I'm sealed if a very firm and white vault, cursed so that I'm unable to use aura, and bound so tightly I couldn't even move my teeth let alone my arms and legs? Of course, even in that state I can use 100 Ghosts reincarnation. But what if someone puts me in a vegetative state? Father. I am not invincible, Estelle. The higher we climb in the tower, the stronger the enemies will be. It is necessary to always expect the worst, and if that truly happens, I'd like you to lead the family clan. Estelle closed her eyes. She quietly sucked in a breath before exhaling a bit more strongly. The scent of potent ruin flowed from her mouth. Yes. Estelle reopened her eyes reverently. She grabbed her blade with both hands, then pressed her forehead to the crossguard. I, Estelle, will be the successor of the Death King family. I nodded. Good. We might still be inexperienced as parent and child. However, if it was a relationship as family head and successor, we could do that well. There's no need to be impatient. This was a start. Normal people became parent and child first, then head of the household and successor. But that was only for those who had normal luck. After being broken into pieces, we had been scattered across the world, and only met each other by accident, in reverse. We had no choice but to become a family backwards. That was enough. You will be treated as the successor, but, normally, you will serve as advisor and assist me. By asking me to be your advisor. I mean the one I seek for advice. Estelle, you once led a great army in the past and brought down the kingdom, and the Holy Land led the continent. I cannot compare to you when it comes to strategic sense and military knowledge. As I climbed the tower, I slowly began to feel it. The number of stages where individual hunters could act on their own was gradually decreasing. On each stage, the size of the forces that appeared as enemies was getting larger and larger. I had managed to clear the burning mansion by myself somehow. But things had already become quite difficult from the tragedy of the Aegean Empire. Wasn't that stage originally a scenario where the high-ranking hunters played the roles of Grand General, Knight Commander, or Chancellor, to try and raise the dying empire together? I just dug into the blind spots of that stage. Single play was not normally allowed. That action that I was referring to was no different from a cheat. Even the Great Library's books of Apocalypse forced team play. After entering the race war, it reached the point where we had to guide an entire race. What did the flow of this series mean? The tower is ordering us to create forces. I narrowed my eyes. The list of stages in the tower is never without meaning. No,
So,
Jung never did anything without meaning. This was a recommendation. A warning. It was a warning that if you didn't build a force in advance, the difficulty beyond the 50th floor would become incredibly severe. Our tower now, I am the only one aware of this warning. Because I was the only one who had come face to face with
So,
Jung. Only I knew what kind of person the owner of the tower was, what she thought, and what she wanted. And this would without a doubt serve as a huge advantage when attacking the tower in the future. I have to raise a force. Fortunately, I had people around me. A lot of people. People who would mean more to each other than just being a large gathering of people. This is my luck. Thanks. I was deeply grateful and thankful. We are strong. I looked around the courtyard. The demonic cult warriors, prostrating themselves to me. The 4 demon lords, who led the warriors. The warrior commander Aberka, who commanded the 4 demon lords. The Grand Chamberlain Sylvia Evanale, who supported them from the back. The family shadow Kim Yul, who would organize an intelligence unit and act behind the scenes. The advisor Estelle, who would advise me from my side. They looked at each other's faces one by one, made eye contact and exchanged wills. The people who exchanged or shared death with me, and who had vowed to live together. We are strong, and we will become stronger. I opened my mouth to Estelle. This dad is good at rescuing and uniting people. I can boast that I am quite competent in that regard. Dad can tell what kind of scars a person has by looking at them, and what I can't tell from looking at them, I can tell when I die. That's why Father shares scars with people. Divided into a single family clan. If we try harder, we might become a family. However, this father is still inexperienced and lacking about how to make the ones I rescue and unite into a force. Very much so. I smiled. So I'll need your help, Estelle. The history of you becoming the Devil King and destroying the continent was lost because of me. But it wasn't a pointless trauma. Precisely. You can do it. I gestured to Estelle. Estelle approached me with cautious steps. I took Estelle's hand, sat her down on the living room floor, and made her look in the same direction I was. Look. I made her share my perspective. The scars you received while experiencing the trauma of your life are not just scars, and now you will protect the family clan. My family clan. Your family clan. Our family clan. No one will burn our family clan. I spoke to the child who had become my daughter today. And at the same time, I conveyed what I wanted to say to this child. This time, with the things you gained from destroying your world, protect the world. Dawn broke. As the dim glass color dyed the world, the color of the sky stayed on Estelle's face for a moment. Estelle gave a small nod. Yes. then nodded once more. Yes, I will protect it. Estelle raised her left hand. Then, she grabbed the skull mask which always covered half of her face, took it off, and threw it lightly towards the ground of the courtyard. As soon as the old bone touched the ground, it crumbled into dust. I will protect our world. Estelle turned her face to look at me. Since becoming a 100 ghost, this was my first time seeing Estelle's entire face. Family head. The dew from the long night covered her face. It was dawn now, so it wasn't strange to see dew form on things that were born into the world like blades of grass. I will be your advisor. So it also wasn't strange for Estelle to smile brightly. Nodding silently, I finally got to my feet. I looked up at the sky where the glass color was turning blue and shouted. We're done now. The sky was quiet. The vacation has ended. Thanks to your consideration, I was able to see many things, and experience many things. Nevertheless, instead of making me weaker, the things I saw made me stronger. And instead of burning me, the things I experienced were burned by me. The sky distorted. Now. A beam of light fell from the sky. Please send us to the next stage. Then, a voice rang out from the sky. The constellation, the lady who walks through the mirage, is manifesting. Chapter 241. We sat in the living room of an old city, too. The lady who walks through the mirage is manifesting. In an instant, the light that descended from the sky broke into small pieces that floated down. Countless petals, petals, petals. The shiny white petals fell into the courtyard. The petals only had color, they didn't have an outline or scent, so they resembled transparent butterflies dancing beautifully. Hello. Then, in the midst of the fluttering petals, one of the tower's pillars stretched with all their might. Long time no see. Everyone. The pillar. The lady who walks through the mirage was a blonde little girl. The lady used the petals like a staircase as she descended from the sky with small hops. Those of us in the courtyard looked at the scene, which looked like a god dancing as she descended to the ground. How have you all been? Were you all satisfied with the vacation I gave you? Tack. Finally, the lady's shoes crushed the last petal and she stepped onto the ground. The crushed petals turned into white dust before disappearing without a trace. Aya, Death King. It's so lovely to see you together with your beloved lover and beloved son. The lady looked around. Surrounding her were those who had once carried the yoke of 100 ghosts, but had now gained living bodies. Right. It seems you had a really great holiday, Death King. HNNG. The lady seemed to realize something. Then, she turned her head to look right at me. It's been a long time, lady. Huh. I sent you here to take a break. But what is this? Instead of a holiday, it seems you did something unimaginable. Death King, why do they have physical forms? Why have they returned to their primes? I did what I always do. I spread my palm. I got a good skill, and used it for good. When the skill opened, a golden skill card appeared. Upon seeing the golden card, the lady's eyebrows furrowed. Earthbone Dragon's Skull. Wait a minute. This. Yes. It's a skill your mother has. I know you're the Tower Master's first daughter. And I also know that the Tower Master's real name is Ja.
So.
Young. The lady's expression stiffened. The more words I continued to say, the more the surrounding atmosphere darkened. With an HNG, the lady tilted her head and looked at me. Right. You really learned a lot, Death King. Yes. Awesome. Amazing. I'm not joking. It really is a sincere compliment. Because if you have a copy of Mom's skill, that means you died to her once. In that case, did you see it? The lady gently grabbed my forearm. Then, she leaned her body like a snake, and whispered into my ear. Mom's trauma. How much did you see? It was only then that I realized that the faces of the lady and the tower master were similar. Both of them had brilliant blonde hair that would make platinum blondes envious. They also had the same habit of whispering into other people's ears. I fell right in the center of the noble council that the tower master was attending. Aha. Aha. So? I eventually realized just how rotten the world the tower master was living in was. And how
So?
Jung saved such a place. And that she went on to become a duke. Is that all? And I also found out about the golden rule. The lady closed her lips. The lady who walks through the mirage is shocked. It seemed she hadn't expected me to get so far. There I saw the tower master's will. The tower master intends to bear all the wounds occurring in the world. Mom isn't saying that lightly. She really intends to create that kind of world. The lady's voice was weak. A world where everyone blames just one person, so that there are no more people who were wrong for being born. A world where Mom is the only person who was wrong for being born. Her eyes seemed to be looking somewhere else. In the past, when the light of reason was extinguished, people were engulfed in fear. They used scapegoats to alleviate that fear and dump sins and pain. Just like the snail empire that Heretic created. All of this happened because of you. The world of primitive religion, which was created to try to soothe people's feelings and logically wraps in the conclusions of human history, overlaps with Mom's world. All of this happened because of me. How fun! The lady, who said those words, didn't actually look happy at all. However, soon enough, the lady's tone of voice changed as if she was trying to change her mood. In any case, Death King, you managed to come back after going there. You're a lot tougher than I expected. I'm not the type of person to give compliments, but I think I need to. That's awesome. With an oh-dash sound, the lady clapped her hands together. The lady who walks through the mirage praises you. You're welcome to give me compliments. But you should send us to the next stage first. The holiday was longer than expected. I have to think about my colleagues waiting up there. Well, I already took care of that, so you don't have to worry. But okay. The lady looked around. Then let's tear you apart. I'll send Raviel to the world with the Somruin Academy. Should I send the Constellation Killer to the Planetarium Cafe? HNG, the 999 cult members are a problem. For the time being, you can train in the Murim. Lady Nim. You don't have to do that. I took the lady's hand. The people here, everyone except for Raviel, will participate in the next stage attack. The lady crossed her arms. What are you talking about? Floors 30 to 40 are only accessible to the highest ranked hunters. I know your warriors are strong, but they haven't yet been ranked. No. I was still holding the lady's wrist. They're going up to the next stage with me. What? Not just this stage, but the next stage, and the stage after that. They will continue to move with me until we see the end of the tower. Words that didn't conform to the rules. Behavior that wasn't tolerated in the tower. I was saying, it's okay, as if it didn't matter. The lady's lips curled. How will you do that? What authority do you have? I don't have any authority. All I have is what we talked about when you first arrived, it's just this skill. I showed her the Earthbone Dragon's Skull card. They are all tied to my skill, Earthbone Dragon's skull. Huh. So? And in the Books of Apocalypse, which also accepted a limited number of people, I wrote the 100 Ghosts Reincarnation. I spoke forcefully. In other words, the addition of people according to a skill does not violate the rules of the tower. In other words? It is the same this time. I possess the Earthbone Dragon's skull, and there are about 1,000 people from my family clan bound to it. Therefore, it would be correct to interpret it as the 1,000 troops of my family clan being attached to me. Our Death King doesn't have a habit of playing by the rules. The lady smiled mischievously. However, weren't the 100 ghosts your summoned beasts? These guys are living humans. Or is Death King trying to say that you treat them as your summoned beasts? Or are you trying to request another Pillar Council again because there is an interpretation problem? The lady was without a doubt the Tower Master's daughter. The smile that hung from her lips as she turned around with her hands behind her back was reminiscent of a snake's glistening scales. I'm telling you, the probability of you receiving support in the Pillar Council again wouldn't be very high. Especially if it's made known that you have Mom's skill. You saw the kingdom's noble council, didn't you? There were many people who worshipped Mom and just as many that hated her. Naturally, this is the same among the pillars. Death King, the fact that you have Mom's skill alone is enough to offend. Lady. I interrupted her. I asked the lady whose head was tilted. Lady. What is a skill to you? HNG, after making a sound, the lady immediately replied without hesitation. A preservation technique. A tool for winning against others. A way to occupy a favorable position. No. I shook my head. I thought that at first too. Then what? Skills, without exception, contain the life of someone who lived in another world.
So?
Jung had told me. Skills encompass the abilities that someone had or someone's life. To put it simply, skills were self-portraits, and when we used skills, we weren't just attacking someone, at the same time, we were proving the trace of someone who had been in the world a very long time ago. I can tell just by recalling the Puppeteer's Parade card. A skill that the Constellation Killer once had. Although I didn't have it, I remembered the description of the card vividly. Using aura, I created an imitation in the air that had the same words written on it. Plus. Puppeteer's Parade. Rank S. Effect, in some world, there lived an old puppeteer. The puppeteer was afraid of receiving love, but he wasn't strong enough to endure eternal solitude. Let's make another me. So, the puppeteer designed it. Let the other me be loved. Let it live with people, among people. And if it gets hurt, I'll throw it away, whispered the puppeteer. Erase it forever. Countless puppets lived. Countless puppets were discarded. This skill is a black art for the weak. The ability to choose or throw away memories. You can make 13 puppets that have the exact same appearance and abilities as you. When one puppet dies, another one awakens. Broken dolls can be repaired. It is your imitation of immortality. A fabricated eternity. However, memories are not shared between puppets. Even Goblin High Society carries the same logic. Plus. Goblin High Society. Rank F. Effects, the King Goblin was lost in thought. The level of culture for us goblins is too low. All languages end in kerk, kirk. I cannot show my dignity with this. Then, the King Goblin's genius mind flashed. That's right. From now on, I will speak Gork and not Kirk. Gork. It's a pronunciation that perfectly fits the precious king. However, the fights within the tribe become worse. This is a skill copied from the great king goblin monster. Plus, if skills were just tools, and their only meaning was for a function, then why were there so many explanations like that? You just said it, Death King. It's because people usually like to think there is some depth in the setting when fancy flavor text is included in the card game. In reality, it's just to overwhelm others. No. Interrupting the lady again, I lifted a skill card. Skills aren't just meant to overwhelm others. The card in my hand was Sword Constellation. A card I got as a beginner who didn't know anything. Instead, it is a system for connecting with others. And it was a skill that had a deep impact on me. Skill card open. Letters leaked out from the card in my hand. Plus. Sword Constellation. Rank, A+. Effect, a ghost from another world. He cleared the 99th floor in another world but failed the 100th floor and died. The resentment remained, causing him to become a ghost. He cannot interfere with the physical world, but it is possible to tamper with the owner's mind. Seek advice from his rich experience and amazing skills. However, no one can see the ghost except for the owner. This skill was copied from Hunter Marcus Callenbury. Plus. Beihurayung stood behind me, with his hands behind his back, showing the same appearance as the days when he dominated the Murim. This is the real intent behind skills. I said. To connect people with people. Connect worlds with worlds. The fact that the skill I used to stretch my legs today is the same technique an old master spent his entire life to learn some time long ago. So through skills, we can feel other humans and connect with them. That is what your mother, the owner of the tower, wanted. The lady was silent. Very silent. She opened her lips for a moment, before closing them, and then opening them again. Seriously. So the lady's words flowed out occasionally with long intervals in between. I can't put it into words. Silence fell again. So, Death King. You want to go up together? Yes. Please. Hugh. The lady sighed heavily. The lady who walks through the mirage shakes her head. The lady swung her sleeves and shouted at the surroundings. I will send all of you to the 36th floor. If you have things to pack, do so quickly. I won't give you much time, so make sure you all gather in 2 minutes. Quickly. Hurry. I'm busy. Clang, clang, clang. At that, the warriors, who had been utterly disorganized, began to move. They moved as carefully as they could, but that alone was enough to make the old hammock shake as if it was being swept away by an earthquake. Ho! I was dumbfounded. Oi! Be careful. If you break anything. I'm fine. The house owner,
So.
Jung, spoke plainly. These are things I don't use anyway. If they're broken, it wouldn't be that bad because they would be memories of you guys coming and going. I took a deep breath. Then, to the altar of God, who was determined to sacrifice everything and live the most miserable life in the world, the being that was simply the incarnation of maternal instinct, the 3rd grade student of Shinseo Middle School,
So.
Jung, I said. Would you like to come with us? No. The question was long, but the answer was short.
So.
Jung bowed. I'm sorry. But if I go, no one will take care of the rabbits at school. There are also people who would be sad if I left. Not many, but there would certainly be some. It's summer vacation now, but Mr. Beck, Sr., and Ms. Doyen too. They would probably feel lonely if this one disappears. So, I'm sorry, but I can't accept Mr. Gongja's offer. Perhaps. If I asked for help. Ja.
So.
Yung would follow me without hesitation. Because she was God, a fragment of God. Because she was a part of a God who wished to bear the scars of everyone. Yes. I wasn't climbing the tower to prove God's omnipotence. Then it can't be helped. Stay healthy, Ms. Ja.
So.
Yung. In the meantime, I'd like to apologize for my discourtesy. Thanks to you, I was able to enjoy a comfortable stay with my lover and son. For everything, really, thank you for your consideration. You have my heartfelt thanks. In order to create a world that didn't need God, I would climb the tower. To show that it was possible to live happily without asking God for help. Yes. To prove that she wasn't wrong for being born. Travel safely, Mr. Gongja. Ja.
So.
Yung prayed for me. Then, at that moment, pure white light enveloped the old hammock. The 36th stage is being opened. Those climbing the tower. Just before we were completely wrapped in light. When I looked back, worried about Ja.
So.
Yung, who was near me, I saw a surprising figure. Ja.
So.
Yung was smiling brightly. And her hands were clasped together as if she was praying. With the white light shining around her, she looked like a god praying to a human, not a human praying to a god. Opening her lips slightly, she muttered. May luck be with you. Then the light embraced our family clan. Chapter 242. We sat in the living room of an old city, 3. When my eyes opened again, I realized the teleportation was completed. A pure white space. There was no horizon, mountains, streams, and vegetation. We were in a 3-dimensional space that looked like blank drawing paper. A rest stop wedged between stages. We had arrived at the temporary base, to prepare for the next attack. It's been a while since I've been here. Although it was too bleak for me to feel nostalgic. Now that I think about it, what exactly is this space? Curious? Taut. The lady who walks through the mirage, who had teleported with us, lightly landed on the ground. The lady looked back at my face with a smile. No. It was just bothering me a bit. This is one of the world's mom created with Mansing. Wow. There shouldn't have been any noise when I recited that sentence just now. Boing, boing, while saying this, the lady suddenly jumped up and down as if she was amazed and excited. It seemed as if something extremely pleasing had happened. Listen. Words like muligagamia or geshviinail, that are originally caught by the security level, and all the others that you aren't supposed to know are translated into the kingdom language of the main world. Amazing! The lady who walks through the mirage praised your security level. The lady kept shouting, amazing! Amazing! That seemed to show how exceptional the fact that the security level didn't apply to me was. By the kingdom of the main world, you mean the world where Viscount Ja.
So.
Yung lives. MHM. The lady answered nicely. The tower translates every language, except for one, the language of the main world is not translated. Didn't Gongja say you went to the main world with the trauma? How was it? Were you able to understand the language? Yes. I could understand from the beginning. Suddenly, a possibility occurred to me. At that time, I had possessed Baron Guwon.
Ha!
Baron Guwon.
Ha!
Should have learned the kingdom language, so while I possessed her, I was able to listen and speak without any problems. HNG. I see. When the lady heard my words, she made a HNNG sound through her nose. Then, she came a little closer and looked up on my face. It was a little uncomfortable. WH what is it? Of all things, Advisor Gu 1.
Ha!
And Death King, HNG. Do we have anything in common? No. At all. The lady raised her waist and waved both of her hands. Looking at your lives, you have nothing in common. Instead, if you two met, you'd probably become enemies in less than 3 seconds? That bad. MHM. That's just how different your personalities or styles are. But, that's right. The lady waved her hand in the air. Flutter. White flower petals flowed out of nowhere and hovered around the lady's hand. Let's say there is an innocent child, and in addition to that, there is a world. It was mysterious. The white petals fluttered in the empty drawing paper world, and the space suddenly became a temple filled with the sacred songs of life. But in order to save this child, you have to destroy the world. Conversely, if you leave the world as is, the child will die. Is that a bit more extreme than the evangelist of everlasting happiness world? MHM. You have already experienced such a world. But the reason you were able to make such a choice back then was because you had the power to turn the world upside down. That was right. If I hadn't had that skill, it wouldn't have been possible to choose that option. If you didn't have that power, all you could have done was choose between the two options. Now, Kim Gongja. What would you choose in this situation? Would you save the child? Or would you maintain the world? I crossed my arms. Save the child. That was a quick answer. Why? If that is the only way to maintain the world, then that isn't a proper world anyway. That's why I have to save them. Ahaha. The lady let out a quiet laugh. It was a laugh filled with interest and knowing at the reason. Right. Such a world wouldn't be worth much. The person you possessed would probably think the same. You're talking about Baron Gu 1.
Ha!
Right? MHM. The lady nodded. Because that person loves Mom very much. No, it's more worship than love. Well, let's look at it as a priest expressing their desire to monopolize God. You'd better be careful as well, Death King. The lady grabbed my shoulder. Looking behind me, my close to 1,000 family clan members were all looking at me. You created a family clan this time. It'll be nice. Faith will overflow. You will feel like you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. The lady who walks through the mirage whispered quietly. However, they are a group that stands united because of you. The group that stood united looked at me. If it's not you, if you're not around, they become a group that has no reason to be one. Did you know? The lady crept up to me, placed her hand on my shoulder from behind, and whispered. The cult members of the demonic cult cannot tolerate Estelle, who mercilessly slaughtered the public. The constellation killer, who used to kill constellations, cannot accept your son, Aberka. They are all people who lived different lives in different worlds. They cannot mix. Her whispers were like the hisses of a snake. Besides, they aren't all, are they? There are people that even you are putting off until you figure out the right time, aren't there? Among the people you will meet in the future, I'm sure there will be some that you want to embrace, right? That's right. Death King, the more your family grows, the more that discord will grow. Then that being the case, the moment you are not around, or you're in even the slightest bit of danger. The lady put her hands together before spreading them apart. Paw. A playful explosion sound came from the lady's mouth. Then, the lady laughed as if she was having a good time. Climbing the tower? Helping the weak? Creating a world where no one's sacrifice is forced, and where everyone has to bear their own scars. Although that's a good story, Death King, if you die, or get really hurt, it'll just end up being a story told to children that doesn't really matter. Everyone is struggling for you without caring about the world. That balance has been broken, and things like the world will never weigh the same as you. The lady who walks through the mirage gives a deep warning. Don't die. Death King. Don't get hurt. Don't get kidnapped. Don't get tortured. Don't sacrifice yourself to do something. The amount of blood you shed, the weight of that blood, that is the portion of those children's hearts that will be dyed red. In this pure white world that was a knockoff temple, with a frivolous smile and a somewhat reverent voice, the daughter of God gave me a prophecy. Be happy. If you are happy, your other family clan members will be happy. Do your absolute best. This isn't just about being emotionally happy, it's about knowing exactly why we are doing this, and knowing exactly how great it would be when it's done, things like that. That is how happy you should be. I nodded. Yes. Another quick answer. Are you sure you know the answer? If other people are happy, I will also be happy. I said emphatically. As long as I'm fighting for someone, as long as I'm continuously fighting, there will never be a day when I stop being happy. The lady smiled. Then, she held my hands. Please take care of my mom. Light spread brilliantly through our clasped hands. At the same time, I flinched. I could feel a tremor from the lady's hands on my own. It was a tension that didn't suit the lady who seemed to always be smiling leisurely. I unconsciously raised my head and looked at the lady's face. Lady? Please. Please. With tears in her eyes, the daughter of God begged. Save my mom. There are too many unhappy lives. So there are too many lives blaming mom, lives that mom is responsible for, too much pain. Lady Nim. There are already a lot, too many, and there are more and more every second. That seemed to be true. I thought back to the worlds I had experienced during the missions. I wondered how many of the ordinary people who had died in vain due to the Devil King's attack in the world of the Ejim Empire were the Tower Master. I wondered how many frozen corpses of nameless people who had died of starvation in the Murim that Master belonged to were the Tower Master. In the worlds of the Evangelist of Everlasting Happiness and a few others. How many among those who had been discriminated against, abused and killed in the Rime * Empire created by the heretic questioner were also the Tower Master? I completely forgot about this typo that I decided to keep. How many people on Earth where I once lived? Please. The daughter of the suffering God sobbed because she had such a God as a mother. I beg you, please. And at that moment, a voice announcing the entry into the stage resounded in the space. The 36th floor stage has opened. Those climbing the tower. May luck be with you. I patted the lady on the shoulder. Okay. I nodded determinedly. I'll save her. The 100th floor was still far away. However, when I got there, it was definitely something that I would do. Although it will be hard, please wait. To save the God of all things of every world. We would save that God. It was simple, clear, and perfect. Because we are strong. You are forcibly being sent to the 36th floor. I patted the shoulder of the still crying lady and looked directly in front of me. Light was sweeping over from the other side of the endless drawing paper. It was literally a quiet explosion of light. The tsunami of light swallowed me, Kim Yul, Sylvia Evanale, and the rest of my 1,000 or so family clan members and swept us away at the same time. At the last moment, I smiled at the lady who would be left alone. 4. Then, we were floating above a plane. This wasn't the first time I'd found myself floating like a ghost, but it was certainly different to play ghost with several people, to be precise, with the 1,000 or so members of my family clan. If anyone were to see this, they would think the world was ending. I looked around. Soon, I noticed grounds that were just as large as ours. On either side of the vast plain, soldiers bearing different flags were fighting. You. Kill. Don't back down. Kill. Kill. On one side was an army of Oni, the race led by the rank 6 hunter venomous snake. The Oni were larger than the other races and had 2 horns growing on their heads. Clad in loose armor, they swung swords that were as large as their bodies. And on the other side was an army of goblins, the race I led. Aside from the fact that these children, who I hadn't seen in a long time, didn't have horns, they weren't that different from the Oni. Qua. Horned ones. Let's distinguish victory and defeat. Archers. Fire your arrows. Stay alert. Use the corpses of the enemies as shields to block the arrows. A gruesome battlefield. A battlefield where about 20,000 people from both had been killed and died. For a moment, my heart palpitated. It's unfair because the few of them will never be able to live again. It was a scene that I couldn't help but be stunned after thinking about, but I calmed my mind. Standing there, I didn't let myself be swept away by my emotions, but I also didn't turn away. I faced them all. As a result, I was able to see that. Nyahahaha. On the front line of the Oni army, there was a female swordsman with fluttering red hair. Her appearance was certainly worthy of the attention as she ran across the battlefield wearing something like a robe, with dual swords in her hand. And this female swordsman was certainly attracting attention. It's the Sword Princess. Damn it, she's gonna take all the credit. The Oni cheered. Compared to the crude faces of the Oni who were cheering, this one, how should I say it, it was as if it had been drawn in a different style. But the problem was. Daddy. A burqa poked my shoulder. By chance, can you tell me what that is? I averted my gaze. It was only a short while ago that I had decided to face it without turning a blind eye, but still, in this situation, I wanted to turn my eyes away. However, beside me, Kim Yul muttered cold-heartedly. That's a possessed body. Don't say it. Is it a player who is in a ghost-like state like we are? I can see the image of a middle-aged man possessing that woman who is running wild on the battlefield. Wah. Don't say it. That's right. The reflection of the venomous snake could be seen on the back of the female swordsman running across the battlefield. In other words, that was the venomous snake. Family head. Sylvia tugged on my sleeve. What is it? It's not one. Not one. There, over there. No, don't ignore it. Look over there. Yes. Over there. Sylvia grabbed my head, turned it and forced me to look in that direction. It was also on the front lines of the Oni army. My, it can't be helped. I have to step in. Fixing his gloves, an Oni boy who, unlike other Oni, was quite slender, walked out with 2 swords in his hands. And behind him, there was also the reflection of the venomous snake. In other words, he was also the venomous snake. Ahaha. That's what I'm talking about. We gotta step in. As expected, an Oni girl who, unlike other Oni, had a small body, pigtails and a strange accent, walked out wielding 2 swords. Of course, she was also the venomous snake. That's what we're here for, isn't it? A young Oni man with a sharp appearance that seemed as if he could cut a cake cleanly with his face, walked forward while muttering in a blunt tone. Naturally, he was the venomous snake. 7 Oni, each with unique appearances, appeared in different directions. We, the 7 Oni heroes, are in charge of this battlefield. In other words, the 7 venomous snakes spoke at the same time. I. Plus. Past life multiple possession. Rank, SSS. Effect, possess the persons you choose. When that person dies, you return to your original mind. Cost, not for sale, this benefit can only be obtained via special method. However, you can only possess someone within a minute of their death. Plus. I couldn't help but cry out. What are you doing over there? Chapter 243. Era of Heroes 1. The battlefield was a tangled mess of soldiers. Whether they were the 7 heroes or the 7 venomous snakes, after the venomous snakes' reinforcements were included, the Oni race quickly began to overwhelm the Goblin race's army. If left as is, the Goblin race would be annihilated. Apart from being ridiculous, the venomous snake was strong. And there were 7 such venomous snakes leading the army. Shit. Using void steps I quickly crossed the battlefield. I could hear Aberka and Estelle calling for me from behind. Family head. Family head daddy. You guys wait here first. No, Warrior Commander Aberka. Warrior Commander, head to that mountain peak over there while maintaining voice transmissions with me. The distance between me and the battlefield narrowed in an instant. Aberka imbued aura into his voice and shot it accurately and exquisitely so that it would only be heard by me. The mountain peak? Why a mountain peak all of a sudden? There's something I want you to do. I'll tell you what to do and when to do it separately, so just go to the mountain peak and wait. Ugher. Daddy, no, family head seems to be having strange thoughts again. Tot, tat. Stepping on the air using void steps, I rushed to the middle of the battlefield. If others could see me, there would have probably been cries of astonishment and admiration coming from every direction. However, I was like a ghost now. Only a player would be able to see me. And on this battlefield, except for my family members, the only player was the venomous snake. Nahahaha dash. On the front line. A warrior cackled as they swung their twin swords. I heard that the Goblin race is the strongest race in the world, but that must have all been nonsense. Not a single being in this so-called strongest race can catch me. Come on. I am Sword Princess, one of the Oni race's 7 heroes. Come and die more. With fluttering red hair, the warrior crossed her twin swords. The crossed blades easily blew the head off of a goblin warrior. A life belonging to beings that I raised, cared for, and called my children, had been lost. This. Feeling my heart would explode from anger, I immediately stood in the way of the red-haired warrior. What the hell do you think you're doing? The warrior, who had been walking around the battlefield until then, smirked and raised her eyes. Oh. What's this? Is it you, Death King? You're finally here? The venomous snake recognized me immediately. He didn't seem very happy. Well, for me, it had been a while since we'd last met, but for the venomous snake, it had only been a few days. Finally here, is this really the time for such carefree greetings? Why are you personally in the middle of the battlefield cutting? Hey. Relax, man. There is a war among the races. Since I'm the god of the Oni race, I can stand on their side and fight. Why are you making such a big deal about it? That. I was about to explode with anger. But war was war, and even though we were talking, the battle didn't stop. Yugu. Perhaps they saw this as an opportunity. As the sword princess talked to me, one of the goblin warriors roared and stabbed forward with their spear. Who? Of course, a martial artist like the venomous snake would not fall for such tricks. Lifting one of the twin swords, he threw it at the incoming goblin warrior with a whoosh. Puk. The blade accurately stuck into the forehead of the goblin. The goblin then collapsed to the ground, bleeding. Chun Mumun master. Seriously. So annoying. Hey. Should I not fight this war because you want it? If you come late, you should suffer like a latecomer. Shut up and turn your troops around. Why should I? This is a war that was bound to happen. If one side wins overwhelmingly, then the damage will be reduced. And, dude, regardless of if it's the Oni race or the Goblin race, how can they just retreat? They would suffer more casualties while retreating, dumbass. Twet. The sword princess spat before stepping forward. Then, after pulling her blade from the corpse's head, the sword princess once more took a stance with her twin swords. I'll see you after this is over. Damn it. The venomous snake had a point. Now that the two armies were intertwined, in order to make them retreat, they would have to be separated first. So, I decided to do just that. Warrior Commander. Turning around, I sent out a voice transmission. Far away from the battlefield. There was a mountain range that hung over the plain, and on the highest peak, a burka caught my entire voice transmission. Can you hear me? Yugo. I will always hear the family head's words clearly, even if I were to fall into the depths of hell. Warrior Commander, you're the only one among us who has a body. A burka, who was originally from this world, let out a laugh. That's right, Ugger. This battle needs to stop. I would like you to play that role. Both starting a war and preventing it are my specialties. However, how should I do it? Pick up the mountain peak. There was silence for a moment. When I looked up and strengthened my vision with aura, I could see the puzzled expression of a burka, who was on the distant mountain peak. Pick up the mountain peak? Are you insane? Why? After all, it's possible if it's you. Well, it's possible if I overdo it a bit. Pick up the mountain peak and slam it down right in the middle of the battlefield. Pick a place that doesn't have any soldiers. If such a ridiculous scene takes place, the soldiers would be so shocked that they would have no choice but to stop. Ugger. A burka smiled. Is this the first order that Daddy, who became the family head, is giving to his son, who became the warrior commander? That's right. Great. A burka stood up. I was worried that things would become boring after Daddy became the family head, but I was worrying for nothing. Daddy has always been a psycho, and regardless of if your title becomes family head or god, a psycho will always be a psycho. Rumble. A sound similar to thunder came from the distance. Aburka's body grew larger and larger as his aura was compressed and amplified, which released a fierce sound. However, the ordinary soldiers couldn't tell the identity of those sounds. Yugo, I guess it's going to rain on this Sherbal *ing day. Asterisk, could be fucking day, but Sherbal is a cheer for them, so I'm really not sure which it could be. Stop that crazy sword princess or whatever. Yugo. If we don't stop her, we'll lose. The goblins shouted rallying cries as they reorganized their ranks. Despite the fact that the 7 venomous snakes were destroying the front lines, the goblin race didn't back down so easily. They were warriors after all. And it was none other than me, Kim Gongja, that had raised them with my sweat and tears. Admirable guys. I looked back to the mountain peak. Warrior commander. Ugger. I'm ready to go, family head. Pull it off. At that moment, an incomparable roar violently shook the entire world. The battlefield shook slightly. When the ground shook, the tall Oni and the large goblins were caught off guard and lost their balances. An earthquake. The Oni commander, who seemed to have a fairly high ranking, shouted. Reform the ranks with your comrades. Don't run away. It's just a small earthquake. Sorry, but it wasn't an earthquake. This wasn't a natural disaster, it was a man-made disaster. Kuong. There was the sound of something breaking. Only then did some of the sharper soldiers turn their heads away from the battlefield for a moment to look up at the mountain range that bordered the plain. Ugger. Standing there was a giant of legend. Here and there, soldiers could be seen with hanging jaws as they pointed towards the top of a mountain. What's going on? What happened? Questions like this spread among the soldiers and more people began to turn in the direction they were pointing. It's been a long time since I used my aura like this. Giantization. A technique in which the user creates the form of a giant with their aura and controls it. Until he met me and received my teaching, it was what Aburka had used to maintain his supremacy over the goblin race. Now, the scene of old, which had been passed down as nothing more than a legend, had appeared in the middle of the battlefield. What is that? What is that? Elf race magic? The elf race sent reinforcements for the goblin race. Crazy. Hey, are we going insane? Huh? Unable to accept reality, the soldiers trembled. Until just a moment ago, they were proud warriors fighting against the enemy. However, after encountering a scene that seemed to surpass their common sense, they instantly forgot their responsibilities. They stepped back unlike soldiers, and trembled unlike warriors. Because in front of a myth, every human is mortal, but they're not human. Probably believing that there was no need to send any more voice transmissions, Aburka opened his mouth wide and shouted. Look closely, my family head. The giant of myth, Aburka, was grinning. I am your warrior commander. The sharpest of all your swords and the greatest beneath your banner. My name is Aburka, the warrior commander of the Death King family, and the first to execute an order of the family head. Aburka then picked up the mountain peak and carried it on his back. The constellation the muscle head who dreams of sinning against heaven laments. Then, he jumped from the top of the mountain and stuck the peak upside down into the battlefield. Boom! A huge explosion rang out. No, it wasn't enough to say it rang out. The entire world reverberated. Carrying the mountain peak on his shoulder as if it was pinned down, Aburka jumped to an unbelievable height, crossed an unbelievable distance, and stuck an unbelievable thing into the ground. Aburka was an unbelievable warrior. Boom! Rumble, rumble. Kaboom! The mountain peak, which had originally been born to tear the sky had, inexplicably, torn the ground instead. A roar sounded on the battlefield once again as it was torn, cracked and split. Boom! Dust and dirt were swept across the battlefield. Screams rang out in every direction. Regardless of whether they were from the Oni race or the Goblin race, the soldiers, who were shocked by what was unfolding in front of them, collapsed to the ground. They let go of their shields and fumbled their spears, so they just stuck to the ground and wriggled like caterpillars. Ugger! A thick cloud of dust covered everything. On top of the mountain peak that had been stuck upside down, sat a giggling Aburka. Compared to before, the size of his giantization had reduced. but at a time when everyone else was submerged in a cloud of dust and dirt, Aberka was the only one who rose above the dust sea, which answered the obvious question of, who is the craziest bastard in the area? It is I. Aberka opened his mouth. The dust-covered mountain peak also resembled a ruined temple pillar. And while sitting on that temple pillar, Aberka looked down at the soldiers on the ground who were shivering in fear. The 212th chairman of the Fire River Council. Gasps of astonishment could be heard here and there. Their astonishment smelled like a sweet scent. Aberka took a few deep breaths before finally letting out a laugh, baring his fangs. And the warrior commander of the Death King family. Aberka. No one asked what that meant. Questions were a privilege that was only afforded to the strong, and there was no strong person there daring enough to ask Aberka a question. My family head wants this fighting to stop, and has ordered me to stop it. Aberka glanced over the battlefield. If any of you have any objections to that, step forward. I'll deal with you. And silence fell upon the battlefield. Sometimes the sounds of cracks spreading could be heard, or the sounds of clumps of rock falling from the mountain peak. But none of the living beings there made a sound. The venomous snake holding twin swords beside me was the only one who made a sound. The venomous snake, who had the face of the sword princess, seemed stunned, with a wide-open mouth. However, they had that expression not towards Aberka, but towards me. Death King, what the hell kind of crazy bastard did you gain? 2. A great warrior only mentioned in legends. A mythical hero who was portrayed in countless fire plays and was popular with everyone regardless of gender or age. The young members of the goblin race looked up to him and screamed. It's Aberka. Aberka. The greatest nut job among our ancestors has appeared. Aberka snorted. It seemed that seeing his distant descendants react in such a way put him in a bad mood. Aberka opened his mouth wide, inhaled deeply, then exhaled all of the air at once. Ugu. A lion's roar. At the base of the torn mountain peak, Aberka spread his chest and literally bellowed a sound. The sound of his roar cut across the mountainside, split the sky, and swept the battlefield. Hick, what is this? My ears. The lion's roar, which had been amplified with aura, did not lose momentum even after sweeping the battlefield and the entire plain. The deer, who had been crouching in the bushes to avoid the battle, rushed to escape. And the birds sleeping in the forest flapped their wings before flying far, far into the sky. In the end, the entirety of the vast plain became silent. There was no sound of grasshoppers, or birds, or even the footsteps of wild animals. Everything that could escape had already run far away. Only the soldiers, who had missed the chance to escape, remained, trembling. In the end, the entirety of the vast plain became silent. There was no sound of grasshoppers, or birds, or even the footsteps of wild animals. Everything that could escape had already run far away. Only the soldiers, who had missed the chance to escape, remained, trembling.
Ha!
It can't be helped. I guess I'll step in. A slender Oni boy, venomous snake, adjusted his gloves as he stepped forward. It's a member of the 7 heroes, sir, silent swordsman. We're counting on you, damn it. The Oni cheered. As if it was absurd, Aberka sent me a voice transmission. Daddy. A nut job is coming over to me. Send him back. Don't kill him. Ugger. Even if Daddy didn't say it, I would feel uncomfortable if I got caught up in a fight with children. The silent swordsman, venomous snake, was nimble and quick. However, unfortunately, it wasn't possible to charge at Aberka. The silent swordsman, venomous snake, was at the bottom of the mountain peak while Aberka was at the top. The distance was a problem. But the silent swordsman shouted, "Oyoi, wait for me," and began to climb. The problem was the moment he set foot on the mountain path, a Burka picked up a piece of gravel, flicked it, and broke his leg with the piece when it hit him. Flop. The silent swordsman, venomous snake, fainted and fell back down. Sir silent swordsman. That's not possible. One of the undefeated 7 heroes. That basically served as a brief life lesson. Firstly, regardless of whether or not he actually was the real Aburka from history, he was ridiculously strong. Secondly, it would be difficult to treat waging a war against a guy like that as a good idea unless you were crazy. It seemed that the rest of the 7 heroes, the other venomous snakes, accepted that lesson. The sword princess, venomous snake, furrowed her eyebrows. Pull back. Pull back. Retreat at once. We will retreat, set up camp, and figure out a way to break through this. That is the will of the 7 Oni heroes. Yes. The morale of the Oni soldiers was depleted. They bowed their heads as the sword princess, venomous snake, gave them orders. After the other members of the 7 heroes, venomous snakes, retreated while carrying the body of the silent swordsman, venomous snake, the Oni race's army left the plain neatly. Your son stopped a war with 1 stone. Sylvia said this in a voice that was difficult to discern if it was exhaustion or sarcasm. Before I could react, Kim Yul corrected Golden Silk's words. The stone was thrown by our family's warrior commander. Chapter 244. After the 2 armies retreated, the plain was revealed, upon which the moonlight flowed abundantly. Except, the mountain peak, which was embedded into the middle of the plain, blocked the moonlight. In the late night, even the stars held their breath. We walked in the shadow cast at the foot of the mountain peak. Is the venomous snake really over there? Kim Yul nodded his head at my question. That's right. Are you sure? There is no mistake. Kim Yul nodded as he looked down at his notebook. The dim starlight trickled down his silver hair. If I were to say that he had a dignity similar to a veteran detective, it might be said that I was too partial to my family members. The location of the barracks has been determined. The lodging of the 7 heroes was hidden in the heart of the Oni camp, but it wasn't to the extent that phantoms like us couldn't find them. Family head. Trust me, and trust the memorial squadron that you assigned to assist me. Right. I nodded. Kim Yul was our family clan's shadow, in other words, he had the role of the head of the intelligence department. And the memorial squadron, who was under this Kim Yu, had been in charge of the Murim's information since the days of the demonic cult. I was certain that there was no intelligence unit in this world that could defeat our families. Let's go. Sidestepping the moonlight, we entered the barracks of the Oni race. The path in the barracks was as complicated and winding as a maze. Tents lined both sides of the path, and between those tents, Oni who were exhausted from the battle were recovering from their fatigue. Snore, nasal sounds could be heard. Couldn't think of an onomatopoeia to match, author used pupuhu but, well. After passing through the barracks and snoring, we finally found a barracks that was a bit more luxurious. Naya haha. Cheers. Pour alcohol here too. That voice was clearly one that had been heard on the battlefield today. A red drape fluttered, carrying the voices and sounds of drinking from within the barracks. Over there. Without a doubt. This was the barracks that the 7 Oni heroes were staying in, the heart of the enemy camp. When I asked with my gaze, Kim Yul answered by simply nodding his head. Okay. In that case, there was no reason to hesitate. Be right back. I stepped into the venomous snake's barracks. The barracks that the 7 heroes stayed in was luxurious. Red silk embroidered the barracks, and wool that was dyed red was placed on the floor like a red carpet. Many soft pillows were scattered here and there, so each of the 7 heroes could pick a favorite pillow to hug tightly or rest their heads upon. And they were having a drinking party. Pour. Drink it.
Ha!
You guys seriously like to drink alcohol. Drinking too much is not good for your health, isn't that a well-known fact? Hoo-hoo. You're only complaining because you can't drink because of your injury. Isn't that appearance too ugly, silent swordsman?
Ah.
I already showed an ugly appearance earlier. Well, I can't really complain about that. While passing and receiving glasses, the 7 heroes chattered. They were all the venomous snake. What the hell are you doing right now? When I muttered that subconsciously, the 7 Oni heroes, that is to say, the 7 venomous snakes, shot up like the 7 dwarves after being fired by Snow White. What was that? It's the enemy. Everyone, 7-point star formation, unfold. Oi, hang on, your guys' heads are full of blood. A confused venomous snake, a cautious venomous snake, a venomous snake that calmly grasped the situation and responded promptly, etc. As the various venomous snakes all reacted differently, I felt like I was going to lose my mind. Ah, please be quiet. Eventually, after my shout, the venomous snakes all coughed at the same time. Then, the Sword Princess spoke up as their representative. What is it, Death King? Why are you here all of a sudden so late at night? Why am I here? I came to ask why the war broke out. The reason for the war? Yes. Didn't you say you'd answer after the fight was over? The fighting has ended. Now answer me. The 7 venomous snakes looked at each other. Then, one of them scratched the back of his head and answered. Well. Basically, it's a war for dominance. War for dominance? Right. Between the goblin race that you lead, and the Oni race that I lead. When you think about it, don't their attributes overlap? I thought about it. Both were races that were muscular and liked to fight. Until now, there was the revival of the arts, the discovery of the new continent and other things, so they never clashed. But 2 lions can't live on the same plane forever, can they? That's why the king of the Oni decided to determine victory or defeat with the chairman of the Goblin Council. That's what was stated in a handwritten letter. I didn't know what to say. No. What do you mean 2 lions? Wasn't that completely covered in the Holy War? Ma. Don't you know best 2 out of 3? I don't know, and I don't want to know. No, in any case. Is that the reason this war broke out? To be honest, the real reason for killing each other is to break their spirit, but, well, what can I do? This happened through mutual consent. As she spoke, the Sword Princess sharpened her blade on a whetstone with a shook SSK sound. Every time the blade brushed against the whetstone, the hem of her clothes fluttered, releasing the faint fragrance of roses. However, it was the venomous snake. That's right. What can I do when it was already agreed upon? Can you understand if you think about it as the brink of life and death of a collective? As the Sword Princess spoke, the figure of the tall, slender woman shrugged her shoulders. Her sharp gaze caused the night air to tremble. However, it was the venomous snake. In short, the current occurrence can be called a dual war where the prides of both races are at stake. We have no right to tear it apart just because the situation doesn't look too good. A girl with pigtails spoke as she bit into an apple. The scene of her intrepid meal, which didn't match her small size, was quite cute. However, it was the venomous. Let's stop. Right. I understand the situation. Then why did you possess 7 people at the same time? It's so distracting I could die.
Hmm.
The reason is simple. This time, it was the sharp young man that replied. Ever since I had entered the barracks, the young man had been standing with his back against a pillar. Maybe it was just me, but it felt like the angle in which he was covered by the shadow was perfect. Possessing several people is much more powerful than possessing one person. It is easier to hold power. We the 7 heroes are in charge of the Oni race. In that way, we can lead the entire Oni race however we please. The other 7 heroes nodded their heads one after the other at the calm statement. In other words, it is a measure to lead this war in an advantageous manner. As a god who leads a race, don't you think that's a good judgment? That's why it's the 7 heroes. Although it was a fresh and amazing scene, I didn't dwell on it anymore. With a sigh, I said. So, you intend to continue fighting like this in this war? With 7 people? Right. Is there a problem with that? I bit my lower lip. Then I said. Questions aside, I have a suggestion. A suggestion? What is it? Please surrender in this war. At my words, the mouths of all the venomous snakes, who had been laughing and chatting until then, lifted into smiles. Then, at the same time, they all burst out laughing. 5. When the 7 venomous snakes acted as several separate characters, I couldn't suppress the strange feeling. This was especially so for the more thorough characters. But now that all of the characters had been abandoned and 7 people with different appearances were acting exactly the same, it was no longer ridiculous. Instead, it was grotesque. Surrender? Why? I spoke to all of the venomous snakes. I now understand why the 2 races are fighting. I also know that I don't have the authority to stop it. Huh. Is that so? And as a result, I can understand why you said if one side wins overwhelmingly then the damage will be reduced. Since it was a fight that was going to happen anyway and I couldn't stop it, then, as the venomous snake said, if one side won by a landslide, the damage would be much less. And to continue along the same logic, it would be the least damaging if one side was to surrender altogether. That's why I'm telling you this. Wow. This guy knows how to spout such bullshit? The 7 venomous snakes spat at the same time. How about this, Death King? Your race, not mine, surrenders. Wouldn't that work? The conclusion would be opposite, but the result would be the same. Wouldn't it be better to do that? Chun Mumun Master. I'm being serious. I'm being serious too, you bastard. Or does it look like I'm playing around? 7 pairs of eyes aimed at me like sharp swords. I just want to minimize the damage as much as possible. Huh. If that's the case, the Death King should surrender. Understand? I can't do that. Sighing, I confided in a frank manner. The children I lead, the goblins, have a pretty bizarre political system. It's easy for them to unite, but at the same time, it is difficult. And in this current case, it is difficult. The venomous snake's fiery attitude cooled a bit. I carried on. In order for my children to surrender, I'd first have to possess the strongest child I have. That child also has to agree to my possession. Then, I'd have to put forward the subject of surrendering to the Oni and suppress anyone who tries to oppose it. And almost every goblin warrior involved in the war would express their opposition to this subject of unconditional surrender. The probability that the individual that accepted my possession would be strong enough to take down all of those people was close to 0. However, Chun Mumun Master, wouldn't it be possible for you to easily unite the opinions of the Oni? I looked at the 7 venomous snakes one by one. You just said it. You can lead the entire Oni race however you please. It would be faster for you to convince the Oni than it would be for me to convince the goblins. That's why I'm asking you. Please, Chun Mumun Master. Please listen to me this time. You won't regret paying that price. You wouldn't want more of the race you lead to die. So, our children. The venomous snake cut me off. Lost too much. The killing intent in the 7 pairs of eyes was subdued. However, the will in them quietly burned even brighter. They lost to the heretic questioner, those snails. They had their horns broken off before they reached 10, then they were enslaved with whips. That was what occurred in the tower before we returned. After that, the allied army gathered to wash away their resentment. The Oni stood on the front lines. However, your race popped up out of nowhere. Right. As you said, they were completely covered. The one who saved the most people in the tower was the Lord of the Alchemy Castle. The one who killed the most people in the tower was the 10,000 Temple Master. The Oni were desperate. Even when other races were reveling in what they called the revival of the arts, they quietly hid and built up their strength. The most feared person in the tower was the Black Dragon Master, and the noblest person in the tower was the Crusader. Nevertheless, that also backfired. In the end, they ended up being the ones to fall behind in the discovery of the new continent. However, the one who was respected the most by their own guild members, by their own people, was the Chun Mumun Master. There was a story like that. Our kids have lost too much. They've only lost. And, it was still happening. Nevertheless, you want me to tell those kids to surrender again? I can't. That's seriously impossible. I understood the venomous snake's words. My suggestion was certainly harsh. However, I clenched my fist. In the end, you will lose again. Because of that big guy Aburka? The one you brought in. It's a situation where an overwhelming victory is needed to prevent severe damage. Rather than having the 7 of you running around on the front lines and slaughtering my kids, I judged that our kids would die much less if I had Aburka pull out the mountain peak. I looked directly at the venomous snake as I said that. However, the 7 venomous snakes snorted at the same time. Death King. Am I a joke to you? Even one of the Oni you possessed couldn't get close to him. It would be the same even if all 7 were to rush in at the same time. That's true. But the thing is, do you really think I don't have any countermeasures? The 7 Oni heroes, the 7 venomous snakes, all looked at me with crooked smiles. I frowned. What countermeasures? Ooh-ha. What spoilers should I give? Let's just say. I have a trump card that can turn that muscle pig into Class 1 pork. Reality won't change even if you bluff, Chun Mumun Master. Why? Scared? Then you can just die. Indeed. Now that I was in the position of hearing it, I could now understand how the Oni felt when they heard it from me. Pissed off. In the end, you won't surrender. Ong. Just like you can't surrender, this side also can't surrender. Then I'll see you on the battlefield. So it shall be. The venomous snake and I stared at each other for a while before saying at the same time. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Negotiations broke down. Chapter 245. Era of Heroes, 3. That night, I was lost in thought. What should we do? A question that I normally would have muttered to myself or monologued before now flowed out of my lips. Hunter. In other words, when I was just a hunter, I had to think about everything on my own. The Black Dragon Master was my only advisor that I could talk business with and receive advice. Since that was what it meant to be a hunter, I never felt that it was lonely. I don't think complete intervention is necessary. Family head. However, it was different now. While looking out across the plains, Estelle answered my question. I was no longer just a hunter. Instead, I was now the head of a family clan, and I no longer needed to mutter to myself or monologue. Beneath the cold moonlight, we sat in an open clearing and talked. What do you mean by complete intervention? The ghost flame demon asked. Estelle answered the question. The Chun Mumun master is using multi-possession as a means to utilize several heroes at the same time. From the perspective of the people of this world, this is no different from a god's power favoring the Oni race arbitrarily. It is irrational. And we have no choice but to use irrationality to fight irrationality. I, the family head, sat in the center, and Estelle, the advisor and heir, sat to my right. Aburka, the warrior commander, crouched his large figure down on my left. Sylvia Evanail, the Grand Chamberlain, was standing, and Kim Yul, the shadow, sat across from me and quietly looked down at his notebook. The leaders were surrounded by the 4 demon lords, who were then surrounded by the 1,000 or so members of the demonic cult. The 1,000 members of the family clan all held their breaths as they listened to the family meeting. In the middle of the night, the moonlight breathed, and wherever the sound of the moon's breath shined, members of our Death King family were immersed. Well, in truth, if even Aburka alone were to make a move, the entire Oni army would be devastated. Sylvia Evanail said flatly. Isn't it possible for the family head to purchase the person possession item? Just buy a few, no, just 2, and give them to advisor Estelle and Shadow Kim Yul. If the advisor were to let loose a boom 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 beam, and the shadow forgets the smell of the coffee he drank last night, the Oni will be eliminated in one shot. Are you dissatisfied with me? What's with that style of talking? Dissatisfied? Definitely not. I, Sylvia Evanail, am as filled with loyalty for the family head as the heavens. My loyalty is more numerous than the cockroaches that infest the food storage in the summer. A completely disgusting loyalty. Regardless of her manner of speaking, the Grand Chamberlain's point is useless. Kim Yul quietly opened his lips. At that, Sylvia raised an eyebrow. Useless? Why? Because it's not the winning that matters. A landslide victory would be easy, and the family already knows this. That's why he asked, what should we do, and not, how should we win? Shook, using the moon as a light, Kim Yul flipped through his notebook. Eyes like a newly born star looked at me. However, the family head's words are also contradictory. Before asking the means, please clearly set the goal you're aiming for. I rubbed my chin. A goal, you say? That's right. Does the family head intend to only have the minimum number of victims in this war, like you declared to the Chun Mumun master? If that is the case, then there is no other option apart from complete intervention. Nevertheless, the family head's reluctance to do so means that you have another goal, and that you're weighing those 2 goals against each other. Kim Yul's voice resembled starlight. This voice, which felt like it wouldn't be a burden even if it was taken and drunk, resounded. The family head considers the goblins to be your children. It's just that they aren't your biological children. Just as parents worry about how to give the best education when taking care of their children, the family head also worries about the goblins with the heart of a parent. And because of that perspective, until now, the family head has refrained from intervening in the goblin race as much as possible. Only when it can't be helped. When the entire race in itself is at risk of extinction if you don't interfere. Only in those situations will you intervene directly. However, there is a war now, even if the Oni are the ones who started it, the goblins seem to want it. Kim Yul raised his head and looked at Sylvia, then at me. This isn't a war over resources, it is a collective duel between warriors. Isn't that why the family head is unsure of whether to intervene or not? I let out a sigh. Raviol's ancestor had accurately discerned my true feelings. Indeed. The sword demon shrugged. It's right, though. If someone got involved in my fight, I'd be pissed. Wouldn't you feel the same? Let's just pretend to pass over the deputy warrior commander's presumptuous words. Estelle touched her chin. In addition to the warrior's pride, it also makes him question whether our large-scale intervention is the right education. God will always intervene when it's necessary. It would not be good to give the goblins that impression. I turned to look at Aberka. What do you think, warrior commander? Ugher. Aberka answered immediately without a change of expression. The family head's thoughts are my thoughts. I see. I nodded. We are strong. Whether it's the goblins or Oni. We can end this war without killing a single person. I removed my hand from my chin. However, now that I think about it, I'm not the tower master. If this war began by mutual agreement. If the agreement included accepting the result. Before anything else, it makes sense to ask the children living in this era for their opinions. The retainers that were exchanging words closed their mouths. Then, they quietly looked at me as if waiting for my orders. Warrior commander. Ugher. You are the only one among us that has a body recognized by this world. You are also a renowned figure who is revered as a legend, which is why you should be the one to go talk to the goblins. Go. Go and ask. Ask the chairman of the Fire River Council, do you want our help, or not? Ask and come back. Ugher. Aberka grinned and clenched his fists. I was waiting for those words. Family head. Wait for me. I'll go ask the kids of this era and return. Thud. Aberka raised his butt, causing the surroundings to shake. Of course, not just Kim Yul, but Estelle and Sylvia as well were great people who wouldn't collapse because of this much shaking. Kuhaha. Aberka seemed to be in a good mood as he let out a loud laugh as he crossed the plains. At the end of the direction he was heading in was the camp of the goblins. Boo! Boo! As if an alarm had been triggered, a horn could be heard from the camp in the distance. Well, considering the fact that a warrior the size of a wild horse had invaded the camp out of nowhere, even the goblins would be alarmed. Not long afterward, sounds of commotion could be heard from within the goblin camp. Will it be okay? Estelle looked at the goblin camp in the distance with a worried gaze. Why? Warrior Commander Aberka, it's only been a little while since we've met, but I feel like he is hot-tempered. I'm a bit worried about whether it is appropriate to send him as a diplomatic envoy from one force to another like now. It is easy for you to see your little brother as an ignorant man who only knows how to fight, but that child's mind is deeper than you think. Flinch. Estelle froze slightly when she heard the words, your little brother. Feeling like she'd heard something unexpected, no, something that was difficult to get used to, Estelle spoke hesitantly. Little brother. You are my eldest daughter, and Aberka is my second son. Therefore, naturally, that makes you two big sister and little brother. Titles like warrior commander and advisor are only for use in public, so you'll have to get used to using them in private. No way, father. Finally, Estelle put aside the official title and called father. Of course, it was said so quietly so as to prevent others from hearing it, then she whispered in my ear. How could I treat such a big child like a younger brother? In the first place, brother and sister. It's a relationship I never had before. I can't even imagine it. It's fine. I patted Estelle's shoulder. After this stage, more people will enter our family. Among those people were also my two starting points. My starting point inside the tower.
Yo. So. Ha!
My starting point outside the tower, the director. Thinking about my starting point outside the tower, I spoke. The director is an amazing person. Making children that aren't family is something he has been doing all his life. Regardless of the difficulties, regardless of the troubles, and regardless of the difficult problems, he always made it work somehow. Are you nervous? Yes. I'm nervous. Estelle lowered her head. Destroying the continent and burning the royal family were difficult, but I wasn't nervous. There wasn't even the slightest hint of anxiety. But I'm not sure if I can really be someone's family. No, in the first place, I don't know what a family is. I repeated my words. It's fine. I held Estelle by the shoulder. We will definitely be a precious being to each other. However, Father, if I, as the eldest sister, were to make a mistake, then we'll discuss it together at that time. Just like now. We'll bring together all the retainers together, sit down, and ponder the problem and the solution. Can you trust this inexperienced dad? Estelle hung her head a bit lower. Then, she murmured softly, like the sound of migrating earthworms. Yes. I'll trust you. Dad. Under the cool moonlight. The two of us, who had just become father and daughter, leaned against each other as we sat. Aberka. That shibboleth ancestor is going to help us? He tore off a mountain peak and stuck it into the middle of the battlefield, and now that power can help us. You go. We should accept it. Let's crush those horned bastards that don't know what's good for them. It's even just crushing those horned bastards. If that shibboleth ancestor helps us, then it would be easy to capture the entire continent, every port, and every waterway, and create a unified nation for goblins in this land. As the heat began to rise together with the voices of the goblins, the current chairman of the Fire River Council made a noise. Enough. All of the goblins flinched. The chattering subsided, and the excitement cooled. The current chairman, Kersenborg, looked around with a glint in his deep blue eyes. Let's say we win and knock down the Oni. If anything, the Oni wouldn't have fallen to our goblin race, instead, they would have been crushed beneath the feet of the great godly spirit, Aberka. Dash. Let's say we were to unite the continent with Ancestor Aberka standing at the forefront. If you look at it, would it be the country of the goblin race? Or would it be Ancestor Aberka's country? Dash. The White Lion has always cared for us and helped us. Nevertheless, the White Lion always asked us to call him friend, because the White Lion thought that friendship would be the most beautiful feeling between him and us. Chairman Kersenborg was a muscular, good-looking middle-aged man. The muscles he developed in his youth supported his body, and the wisdom he obtained as he aged supported his head. Standing between youth and old age, the chairman spoke like the nameless priest of a forgotten temple. The White Lion wanted all of us to feel friendship. If it is too hard, then help. If it is too difficult to help once, help several times. When someone wins, congratulate them. Make the winner feel pleased by expressing feelings of jealousy and envy as they are. The loser should become desperate enough to devote their life so that they will win someday. We should also regard the life of a loser as beautiful, and we should feel boundless friendship towards such a loser. Dash. The crowd was silent. Thousands of goblins listened to the priest's speech with bated breaths. The speech rang in the hearts of the goblins. The doctrine of the White Lion, which had been passed down unbroken for countless years, pounded in their hearts in sync with the speech. Warriors of the goblin race. Chairman Kersenborg looked at the distant lines of warriors beneath him. Are we weak? Thud. 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 The warriors raised their left feet and stomped on the ground. The answer was obviously a resounding no. Is it that we do not dare try to defeat those horned chaff without the help of ancestor Aberka? Thud. 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 Is our goblin race so weak that we need to ask the white lion to come here to lead us and comfort us again? Thud. 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 That's right. We're not. Chairman Kersenborg spread his arm. We don't need the help of our ancestors. God's help is even more unnecessary. Aberka. White lion. Because we believe in friendship, we will respond to you as friends. Wait. Watch. How brilliantly our goblin race will defeat the Oni race without danger or worry. Please look closely. You. The goblin warriors wave their swords and spears in a frenzy. We are warriors born from and raised by the white lion. The white lion feels friendship towards us, so what should we fear? We are one. Fellow countrymen. United as the children of one being. We can't make him worry. There will be no wrinkles on the white lion's white brow. Morale was boosted 100-fold. Aberka said that he had no choice but to smile bitterly in front of these warriors who had no intention to lose. This, you go. Even if the education is good, is it a problem if it's too good? After boosting the morale of the troops, Chairman Kersenborg returned and said, "We do not need ancestors' help. I dare to say that we don't even need help from the white lion. We want to show ancestor and the white lion that we've become stronger on our own." That was the message from the goblins living in this era. 8. As expected of the family head. You raised the race well. Estelle smiled brightly as if she was in a good mood. The others' reactions were similar. Aberka was in such a good mood, he got a barrel of alcohol and drank it, and Kim Yul nodded expressionlessly. However, Sylvia Evanale was the only one who acted as if she didn't like it. "Why are you like this now, Grand Chamberlain?" "I just thought that it was nice that everyone could show off. I don't know if there is any place for a weak person like me to stretch my legs." No, no. This is just the complaints of the weak. I hope the strong Death King family head and the strong retrainers enjoy all the joys. It had been a while since this child had grumbled like this, so I let it pass. This airhead asterisk was probably annoyed because the world would turn out beautifully, asterisk, not exactly, the slang used here is a bit hard to translate. I just lightly flicked a peanut to her head. That hurt. What was that for, family head? You said you wanted to become a person that the butler wouldn't be ashamed of. So take a broader look. Over there. The over there that I was pointing to was the plain that the sun was rising over. The armies of both the Oni and the goblins had begun to advance as if they had completed their preparations. Thud, the footsteps of thousands rang out, thud, and it was immediately echoed by thousands of footsteps from the other side. The thuds rang out across the plains like two different melodies. Nyahaha. Today is the day that will be dedicated as the Memorial Day for the pigs. Of course, the 7 heroes could be seen in the ranks of the Oni army. The venomous snake, the player who was in charge of the Oni race from the beginning of the stage to the end. He had chosen to jump into this war more actively than anyone else. On the other hand, "Is this really fine?" Estelle asked with a cautious expression. "It might not be too obvious if we provide a little help depending on the situation." Family head. If you help in a way that neither friend or foe will notice. No. I raised my hand and cut Estelle off. Now is the time to trust those kids and wait. So to speak, this is a coming-of-age ceremony. The massive race known as the Goblin Race is finally trying to overcome their coming-of-age ceremony. You are free to watch and cheer from afar, and pray for their good luck if you're anxious. I said. But you can't interfere. We will trust the power of those kids and wait. Yes. Estelle didn't raise any disagreements after that. We sat on the mountain that Aberka had broken the peak off of and silently waited for the war to unfold. Then, boo! The sound of a horn came from somewhere. Soon afterward, more horns began to sound. The dawn of the plain was soaked in a paradoxical pain as one horn sounded after the other. Boo! 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 By the time the horns died down. Attack! Someone screamed. Attack! All troops, all out attack! Crush those horned bastards so that they will not be able to attack again. All troops charge! With that loud cry, the goblins began to rush forward in unison. Not to be outdone, the Oni also drew their swords and spears and charged, screaming. I believe. I watched the goblin army with an unwavering heart. You are strong enough to overcome your path. My children. It was the beginning of the war.